Hello there, and welcome to the second episode of the Buckle Bomb Show here on Bomb Media Productions. I'm your host, Bobby, and I'm here with my broadcast partner, Anthony Roan. Tony, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing, brother. Wonderful Sunday afternoon. Looking forward to the week ahead in professional wrestling and discussing this past week and all the news we got going on.
Absolutely, looking forward to it. We'll jump right in to our first subject, where we are talking about Monday Night Raw and some of the goings-on that happened in Jacksonville. You and I both watched all 3 hours. Certainly the first time for me in a very long time. You said it's been the first. It was the first time for you. Raw started out this week with a pretty darn good promo by Kevin Owens to further the feud between him and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Then backstage in the next segment, him and Seth Rollins got together, and Kevin Owens was trying to cheer Seth Rollins up. Rollins was all defeated and heartbroken over the fact that he doesn't have a spot at WrestleMania yet. And KO's like, hey, you're smarter than me. You're the architect. I figured out how to get in WrestleMania. You'll figure it out too. And eventually Seth's face lights up and he's like, oh, I got an idea. And he runs off. And a couple of segments later, he comes out to the ring. And, you know, he's got this bright idea of how he's going to get on WrestleMania. He's going to call out Stone Cold Steve Austin. And eventually out comes KO. And he's like, no, that's stupid. That's my idea. I did that. You can't do that too. So Seth goes on like, well, we'll have a match to determine who gets to host the Steve Austin segment at WrestleMania. And Kevin Owens is like, no, that's a stupid idea. But out comes Sonya Deville, and she is like, no, I like that idea. That'll be the main event match tonight. So fast forward to the end of the show. Main event, Kevin Owens versus Seth Rollins. Pretty good little match. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Kevin Owens goes over, defeats Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins, crestfallen. He still doesn't have a spot at WrestleMania. And here's where we were expecting maybe someone to come out. It didn't happen. Though commentary made a couple of little, and I didn't catch them live at the time. I was told about it later, but commentary made a couple of little teases and phrases. Oh, Seth Rollins' dream has turned into a nightmare, and you know his dreams are dashed, and little teases like that. Tony, what did you think about this storyline that took place on Raw?
Well, my thoughts about it turns out to be exactly the same as Kevin Owens. I don't know why, but I'm really bothered when a company tries to insult the intelligence of the audience that's watching it. I had a huge problem with them deciding to let Kevin Owens come out. Then we go to commercial. We come back from commercial to a promo package about literally everything that's happened between Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins right before the match actually happens, all within that one episode of Raw. And then we find out later on, thanks to Twitter, that Kevin Owens shared the same exact sentiment. I mean, you know, good little match for the main event of Raw, especially considering what Raw has turned into lately. But yeah, not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed by the ending. You know, we didn't get that Cody Rhodes come out. We didn't get any kind of taste on what's happening for Seth Rollins heading towards WrestleMania, because if there's one person on the active roster who you want to actually have a match, it's Seth Rollins, the guy who's had so many memorable WrestleMania moments in his career so far. So hopefully, if the rumor mill is true, night 2, we might be in for a surprise for Seth Rollins.
Well, maybe, and we'll talk about Cody Rhodes in a little bit more in depth. But this specific story, I don't. The problem that you had with the video package before the match, it's a 3-hour long Raw, and for those of us that are watching the whole thing, it's a little like, come on, I already seen all this an hour ago. But it's a common thing you do in TV. You want to reset the audience. You want to remind them what happened. It happens in sitcoms. It happens in all your scripted TV shows. You come back from commercial break, and there's a few lines of dialogue that are kind of out of place. That's just kind of recapping what happened before you went to break. So I don't have a specific problem with that. That's TV. But the thing I do have a problem with was you have this great feud going on right now. You had a great little video that Steve Austin put out. And then Kevin Owens comes out and has a really good, passionate promo at the start of the show. And then, literally, in the very next segment, you're undercutting everything because here's Kevin Owens saying, "Oh, I don't care about Steve Austin one way or the other. I did this just to get on the show. I just made Steve Austin mad, so I'm on WrestleMania." Completely undercutting the feud entirely. That pissed me off. That was kind of stupid. Because now, what? Why is Steve Austin coming out just to because this guy pissed him off just so he would have a spot at WrestleMania? That's what Steve Austin's coming back for. That that was a big lapse to me. Not to mention the whole, even in kayfabe land, like Seth Rollins is one of your biggest box office draws. That you're telling me even kayfabe land WWE can't find a spot for one of their biggest moneymakers on their biggest show. But that I can look past a little bit. Ruining what's going on between Austin and Owens, that was a big deal to me.
Yeah, for as egregious as it sounds that they just diminished this feud they have going on, because I believe I talked to you about this when we outside of recording, but that little promo that Steve Austin came up with the other day, most impassioned I've ever heard him sound about wrestling in quite some time. And for the love of God, he does a podcast basically revolving around wrestling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like it sparked something back inside of Stone Cold, and it had me excited. And like we were saying, we're not expecting a full-blown match out of it, but at the same time, you need to have that really feel like something. It's been quite a few years since we've gotten that Stone Cold appearance at WrestleMania, has it not?
The last time I remember for sure was WrestleMania 30 when they had him, Rock, and Hogan um,
And,
to kick it off. I
and
don't
then
remember.
WrestleMania 31 or 32, wasn't he? Didn't he come out with during the Sting Triple H match?
No, Austin
No,
didn't
no,
come
you're
out for
right.
that. No,
Yeah, so
that
it
was the
may have been
NWO and DX. Yeah,
Yeah, so it might have been WrestleMania 30 was the last time we've seen Austin. So,
on the
you're
show. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So you're absolutely right to diminish that by just saying, hey, it's just the way I wanted to get on the card.
Well,
You know,
it makes Austin, because he's done a good job. I saw a bit of him on the Rich Eisen podcast.
mm-hmm.
Steve Austin was on there promoting WrestleMania and that he's coming back and all this, and he was like, "Yeah, this means a lot to me. It means so much to me." And he was playing it up in kayfabe a little bit too, like, "Oh yeah, Kevin Owens pissed me off, and this is why I'm coming back." But at the same time, this means a lot to me to come back to WrestleMania. Call it whatever you want to call it, a match, a segment, whatever. But yeah, this to me diminished that storyline. And I understand Raw was a little understaffed that night with stars. Brock wasn't there, Bobby Lashley wasn't there. There are a couple other people missing. Apparently, we weren't debuting Cody, uh, but to and this was a good match for a main event for sure. But to diminish the Steve Austin feud, which is what I felt this did. That was a huge mistake. But I mean, people are still going to tune in to WrestleMania to see Steve Austin anyway. But just, I don't know, it hurt that story for me. It brought it down a few notches.
But let's be honest, though, even if, because neither of us are expecting a full blown match, but even if it was just KO in the ring talking a little bit of smack, and then you hear that glass shatter, you see Stone Cold come out, crack open a few Steve Weisers, and stun Kevin Owens. Isn't that just a WrestleMania moment in itself? I mean, especially for those of us who grew up in the Attitude Era.
Sure, but I think at this point it's got to be more than just that, because Austin's done that before at other Manias and at other shows. He's come out, given a couple of stunners, drank a few beers. He did that in Tampa. A couple of years ago during the pandemic. I think just before, and then shortly, I think the first pandemic show, or maybe the second pandemic show. But they're promising something a little more than just he's going to come out, drink a beer, and throw a few stunners around. But obviously, they're not saying, "Oh, it's a match." It's the KO show. So there's going to be a brawl. It's going to be a scuffle. I think Kevin Owens is going to get his in a little bit, and he might even get a stunner on Steve, and then it'll come around, and we'll leave the segment happy with Steve Austin on top, drinking a few beers over the laid out carcass of Kevin Owens. But go ahead.
Yeah, and if memory serves me correctly, when Kevin Owens started using the stunner, wasn't there a little bit of an exchange back and forth between him and Austin on Twitter?
I remember something about that, though. I know Steve has since given his blessing to Kevin Owens, but I do remember there being a brief back and forth. I'm sure Kevin Owens didn't just start doing. Maybe he did. Maybe he's like, I want to do this move. No one else is using it in the WWE right now. Why not me? And he just started doing it. I would imagine he got permission from Vince or from someone backstage at the very least to do it. Maybe he didn't go to Steve, and perhaps he should have, but eventually he got permission from Steve. All right, we'll move on from there to the next topic, which was part of this. Cody Rhodes didn't show up in Jacksonville at Raw when we were all expecting him to, but we've got a report from the PW Insider, Mike Johnson of the PW Insider, who says that, and I got it right here, Cody Rhodes is signed with the WWE. Multiple sources have confirmed. Rhodes inked his deal about 10 to 14 days ago, and that was on the 18th. So pretty close to 2 weeks ago at this point, over 2 weeks maybe. The current plan is to have Rhodes debut at WrestleMania weekend, with early word among those in the company being that Rhodes will be on the Raw brand. If he's been signed for a couple of weeks already, which means he was signed before the Raw in Jacksonville, assuming this is true, why wouldn't you debut him in Jacksonville? Why would you hold off until WrestleMania?
Well, there could be a number of reasons why you hold off on Jacksonville. Maybe Cody wasn't comfortable with that FU that everybody was saying that was going to be a Tony Khan AEW, because last reported he left there and it was a pretty amicable split up and there weren't really any hard feelings. You also have to take into consideration things like, he just had a kid not too long ago. Maybe he wanted some time off the road before hitting that hectic WWE schedule to spend with his child. There's a various amount of reasons, but at the same time, again, we're heading into that season where you want to make all the WrestleMania moments you possibly can.
Sure.
Night two.
And especially with, we just talked about Austin being on the card, and you've got, Brock and Roman in a title unification match. That's humongous. Cody Rhodes being promoted for the show isn't really going to move the needle too much one way or the other. So you can save him as a surprise for the show for the 3 people that don't know that he's coming. But certainly, and maybe you're right. Maybe you're right, too, with the Jacksonville thing. Cody didn't want to kind of stick it to AEW that way. Because AEW, to a certain degree, whether he's there or not, is still kind of his baby. Certainly Tony Khan owns it, but that was kind of started by him in if not an actual sense, then by at least the way he feels, I'm sure. So I'm sure he doesn't want to do anything to really stick it to them. But it certainly feels like they wrote Raw with that ending planned, and then it was like, oh, we're not doing that. Well, he only shows up for 10 seconds at the end for the surprise. Why not just hold off? We'll tell that same story with Seth. That's how we end Raw, which was a little bit of a letdown. WWE couldn't help it, perhaps, but a little bit of a letdown for all of us expecting it. And then we'll see that actually happen in 2 more weeks. Though we still have a little bit of time. We've got another Raw before WrestleMania. But yeah, at this point, it does look like it won't be until Mania when we see him.
Yeah, I mean, unless next week they explicitly come out and tell Seth Rollins that he's going through all this smoke and mirrors to get a match at WrestleMania. I mean, at this point, like you said, there's going to be probably 3 people in the world that don't know Cody Rhodes is coming back. But at the end of the day,
Well,
this is a big name. This is the first like jump from the AEW ship back
right.
to WWE. So,
But to a
and
certain
it's
degree, if you were to come out and say, "Oh, Cody Rhodes is here. Here he is. He's back in WWE, and he's having this match with Seth Rollins, night 2 of WrestleMania, or whatever it will end up being," and you can promote that, yeah. But to a certain degree, the what if is he actually going to appear? Maybe they hold him off till, because what did I say the day of? You texted me. Do you think Cody Rhodes is actually going to show up tonight? And I said, well, it's either going to be tonight or he's not going to be at WrestleMania. They're going to
yeah.
hold him off to the night after, assuming he's signed. And he'll be the big return. He'll be one of the big moments for the Raw after. But
And that is something that I constantly forget about the Raw after Mania. That's usually when you have a lot of your big signings show up. That's when you have a lot of your big returns happen. So
right.
yeah, very interesting, man. I did not think about that.
But but the way they did the story on Raw certainly led you to believe and hint at, no, something's going to happen here. And all of you that know what we're talking about, yeah, that's going to happen. We're teasing that. That might happen at WrestleMania. Keep your eyes open and watch. So to a certain degree, that might actually help promote the event more. Because is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Just like the second AEW Rampage, you know, CM Punk signed. Did he sign? Is he going to show up? Now AEW's not saying anything, but Darby Allin made this little tease in a promo and all this, and it built up so much, nothing was confirmed. But just the groundswell of is this happening made it, one of the biggest moments in wrestling of the last 15 years, maybe.
Yeah.
So they're kind of doing the same thing here with these little phrases and teases. They're not out and out saying Cody Rhodes is here, but it's like, oh, just watch WrestleMania. He's gonna show up and he's gonna blow your mind, and we're off to the races. So
Hey man, he just needed that time to grow that mustache back.
he did say, I don't know if you saw, he did say on Twitter or in an interview somewhere that with his time off, he's been sitting at home, that he actually grew a goatee.
Oh
And
dear God.
and he was kind of happy with it, but that Brandy wasn't so happy. She was hoping to get rid of it. So we'll see. We'll see.
It's his saving grace from the Stardust face paint.
Right. All right, we'll move on to our next topic here. Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker, DMD, had a steel cage match on Dynamite for the AEW Women's title. Thunder Rosa won, finally beat Britt Baker for the championship. And we'll get into our feelings about the match before, but what do you think about this match between Britt Baker and Thunder Rose in the steel cage? What do you think of the match?
Honestly, I think you and I are going to come from two different viewpoints on this. I loved it. AEW match, women's match, it don't matter. Inside of a steel cage, you're going to get that healthy dose of blood and gore. Now, one thing I would like to point out that I don't know if you noticed or not. Are you a big of a fan of the AEW cage design as I am? They had the one side of the cage that you could actually still grab onto from the
That's right
ropes.
up, and that's the far camera side.
Yeah,
Around it is you have a little bit of space. That was interesting. I like that setup. That was the first time I'd seen the AEW cage, and I did like it. I don't hate the match as much as you think I do. I got no problem with women having a more hardcore fight as long as it fits, and this one certainly did. You go through their history, and I had to research a little bit, but apparently they had an unsanctioned match a year or so ago that was bloody as well, and they've had some battles, and they've been back and forth for a year plus now. We had talked about this, I think, last week on the show about why, because you told me they were having this match on Dynamite, and why would, and if they might switch the title then, I'm like, well, why wouldn't they do it at Revolution? And I understand it a little bit better why here, because of the match type. This is the type of match for the history that these two have. This is the type of match that you want. This is the type of match that needs to blow off the feud and get Thunder Rosa over with the title. There were things that I didn't think was great, but I thought it was pretty good. Again, with the thumbtacks. Not the biggest fan of thumbtacks. I don't mind it once every couple of years, as long as it's right at the end of the match, because at that point you can't bump anymore, really. You get a couple of big bumps, but after that it kind of wears out its welcome, and now every bump is on the tacks, and it's just now you're wrestling on tacks, and that's just the match. So it's got to be towards the end.
Didn't you feel bad for Aubrey Edwards every time she went to go count a pin, and then you saw her directly afterwards pulling thumbtacks out of her hand?
Yeah,
Like, geez.
yeah. I saw her Instagram photo too. She had the bloody arm, and I saw it in the match. Because the way the pin happened, for Aubrey to be in position, she had to be right in the middle of the big pile of tacks to make the three. So, and to her credit, she went at it, and she did the three, and I saw her get up, and you could see her going in pain as she's declaring the winner. But I don't mind tacks when they're used right way and very rare. We just saw thumbtacks a week and a half ago, before that show. He didn't need the tacks. I don't think he needed the tacks. They both got juice, which was fine. With Thunder Rosa's face paint, it didn't work necessarily as well. It looked like she tried to write something on her belly with blood after, but her blood had already dried up, so it didn't quite work. But the match was fine. I got no problem with a heavier match like this with women. I know some people are like, that doesn't work with women's wrestling. I think it worked great. I think the match was good. Couple of things I wish they changed or not used, whatever. But yeah, Thunder Rosa, new AEW Women's title, a beautiful new belt, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. That old belt, it was so tiny, and I just felt like it distracted so much from a women's championship belt.
Well, when your first champion's Riho, it's got to be a little small.
Yeah, that did not take that into consideration. You're right, but this one closely.
This belt would be her entire torso. But.
Yeah, this one, this belt definitely resembles more of the men's AEW's World Champion belt. Kind of like the way WWE has the offset just in color for the women's and men's titles.
Right.
But I do like this design. It looks a little bit sleeker. It looks really nice around Thunder Rosa. And this is I'm excited to see where this feud's going to go next, because AEW's women's division right now is pretty stacked. And if they can get into actually showcasing some of the other talent, man.
Sure. And I like that they have a minor championship as well in the TBS championship. Certainly with the WWE, you go, oh my God, too many belts, too many world belts especially. You've got 2 women's and 2 men's world titles, and hopefully post WrestleMania we'll at least have 1 men's world title.
Yeah.
But when you go back to all these mid-card guys and former world champion, because you could have 2 world champions at the same time in one company, it watered it down a bit. But here with the AEW Women's Championship and the AEW Women's TBS Championship, you've got someone like Jade Cargill, who's still pretty green, but she's got a look, and she's got a presence on screen, and you can give her a run with a belt, just like you would if she were a male with the IC title or something like that, and she could you could see what she can do while she's still gaining experience, defending the belt and getting into feuds and all that, and gaining that experience and getting better and better in the ring, so that when she is ready for the women's championship, the world championship, watch out. All right, we'll move on to the next subject from there. The Heat Seeker segment was a thing that we promised we would have ready this week, but Uh, we had some issues. I forgot to do some filming, and we just didn't have enough time last night to get it done. This might end up being like a Brodus Clay situation. I don't know if you remember, Tony, when they brought Brodus Clay out in what, 2012?
Yeah.
They had all these vignettes about this big, tough, nasty bastard of a dude, Brodus Clay. And they kept showing these vignettes next week on Raw. And then next week on Raw, he wouldn't show up. And then they'd run a vignette again next week on Raw. And it just, like 3 months, this started happening. And then when he finally came out, when we finally run your Heat Seeker segment, it's just going to be you dancing with a couple of backup dancers in the background. That's all it's going to be.
I'm going to be the new Funkadactyl.
There you go. But the Heat Seeker segment will be coming. Why don't you give us a little tease for the first subject there, for the first topic?
The first topic, and don't get me wrong, in my heart, I had to do a lot of searching to want to still do this, given the loss of Scott Hall. But this is a bad guy thing, and this is what bad guys do. When the Heat Seeker debuts, I'm going to tell you all why the Intercontinental Championship is merely just a prop and a burning pile of dog shit in professional wrestling.
All right, and I'll have some rejoinders for you. We'll have a healthy discussion after that video airs, but we'll go on and move on to our next topic. It's all about Kenny Omega. Dave Meltzer of the Observer is reporting that Omega is recovering from arthroscopic knee surgery that he just recently had, and that he'll also soon have surgery to repair a sports hernia. He won't be returning until at least well into the summer, it seems like. Your thoughts on Kenny Omega, who at one point said he was hoping to be back in February. It looks like he won't be back until mid to late summer at the least.
Thank God. Just like we were talking about last week with the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega was all over our television screens. He was being force-fed down our throats. And now we're actually getting time to miss the guy. And, you know, I hate to say it, I'm already getting to the point where I miss seeing him on TV. But if you look at what Kenny Omega is doing, not on television right now, the dude is still bettering the company. You know, he's the one who's behind the scenes working on the AEW game. He's the one who's working on calling to get contracts restructured. So, you know, maybe his presence in the ring isn't as important as what he's doing behind the scenes. But regardless, we just wish him a speedy recovery and take care of yourself. Come back when we'll miss you, you know?
Absolutely. And what's great about this, in my opinion, certainly not great. He's getting healthy. Apparently he's been working through these injuries. He's had knee issues. He had the hernia. He had a torn labrum, apparently, too. So, you know, he's getting all these things healed. He's working on these things, trying to get back healthy, which is always great. But also what it does is it does keep him off TV. And we talked about this last week as well. I think him not being on TV, you know, it creates that when's he going to return, that fervor. And you'll have what's his name who appeared at Revolution, Don Callis. You know, he might pop up every now and then to remind everyone that Kenny Omega's still out there somewhere, floating around. But yeah, I think it's a good thing that he's getting all these things repaired. Keep him off TV is fine. Everyone will remember who he is, and they'll be excited to see him when he comes back.
Absolutely.
All right, that'll do it for all our main topics. From here on out, we'll just have a few what I call quick jabs, some little quick notes, some little small pieces of news that we can talk about and run through pretty quickly. One of them being here that the WWE has scheduled, they've got a UK pay-per-view coming up, and they just scheduled it, and they scheduled it the same weekend as AEW's All Out pay-per-view. What do you think about that?
I think that's awesome. I think we're going to get a double dose of two companies in one day. Obviously, this is coming from the UK. The time zone difference is a little bit, you know. So if any luck, the UK premium live event is going to end maybe a half an hour before All Out. I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I agree. Like a lot of people are going to read a lot into this. What's the WWE doing? They're trying to take eyes off of All Out or compete with All Out. I don't think, especially here, that that's necessarily the case. But certainly, as fans, we win. That's going to be a great weekend of wrestling for all of us to watch. Um,
The only tragedy involved with this is you're going to have a house full of significant others who don't give a flying fuck about wrestling be subjected to multiple hours of it.
right, right, sure. But the next little bit I want to talk about Big E, since his injury that we talked about last week on SmackDown. He's continued to do a few posts here and there on social media. He's just been a big ball of positivity. I've loved all the videos he's put out. Have you seen any of them? What do you think about him?
Yeah. You see him walking around his neighborhood in that neck brace and everything, and just that big old smile on his face. Damn, maybe the power of
Yeah,
positivity is a real thing.
maybe. And I'm so happy. We'll see. I heard a report, or at least a doctor that was not connected to Biggie's surgery or his stuff, but talk about what he was diagnosed with this a C1 and I think a C5.
Hmm.
Uh, but the C1 was really could have been really bad, and thankfully it wasn't. But still, because it won't heal, they're not doing surgery, so it won't heal completely perfect. His wrestling career may or may not be done because that could be really dangerous. He lands on that the wrong way, recracks it, and now he's injured his spinal column. So we'll see what happens there. But just to hear the positivity from him, at least outwardly, has been really good, and I'm really happy to see that. CM Punk was not on this week's Dynamite. That is because he's currently filming the next season of Heels, Heels season 2 with Stephen Amell. Did you watch season 1 of Heels at all?
No, and here's the thing. I've heard nothing but rave reviews, but when the
Me
trailer
too.
first came out, it would looked a lot like Days of Our Lives and Friday Night Lights with just a sprinkle of the professional wrestling element in it. But now after hearing all the names that were actually in the first season, it kind of gives me that want to go back and check it out.
Yeah, I didn't watch it either, but I was certainly interested in to see CM Punk at that time because this was before his AEW return, or just before too. But to see that he was kind of back into the wrestling fold, kind of sort of with a different character on TV, was certainly interesting to me, and I never got around to watching it. But I have heard the same good things that you have. Um, Another person not appearing on TV right now, Alexa Bliss. She she was part of the Elimination Chamber match and made her return there, but we haven't seen her since. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt. Why isn't she here? Does creative have anything for her? Why isn't Alexa Bliss on TV?
I think it all has to do with the fact that they're trying to distance her from that fiend character that she was portraying, and
You
going
could have
into
done that because she was hurt and was away for a little while, and then you bring her back at the Elimination Chamber, and there was the perfect chance to get her away from that. And they changed it up a little bit, but she was still in that kind of mode.
yeah, and I think that there's a lot of like, what do we do? What do we do? Because I feel like a lot of it still had to do with Wyndham Rotunda still being in WWE. And now you got to remember when they release wrestlers like this, there's a lot of storyline involving other wrestlers still with the company. They need to go back and they need to account, okay, well, we had this plan going to here and now they're gone. So we need to take this in a different direction. So it's a little bit of a which puzzle piece is going to fit where. And they had a good thing going with the whole therapy session, trying to wean her off of that. But man, hard reboot, man. They've done it multiple times in the past. She's injured. Hard reboot. Just have her come back as Alexa Bliss, and we'll
I,
forgive them.
yeah, I think at this point we'd all just happy to see not necessarily the Alexa Bliss of old either, but some movement forward for this character so that we can be happy to see her and watch her. Uh, the next little bit here I want to talk about was, and I didn't have this in the show notes, William Regal with on Dynamite with a great match between John Moxley, uh, Brian Danielson, and was it the friend the
The
what is
best
the name?
friends.
The
It
best
was
friends.
Willer Yuta and Trent Beretta.
And there's an interesting moment with Yuta at the end where he goes back into the ring, and Regal gives him a slap. And I loved Yuta. Yuta gets right back into his face, almost headbutts Regal, and Regal just smiles. It was a great little moment. Where do you think that's going?
I hope it's turning into an all-out faction. I really do. If you recall, when Bryan Danielson first brought the idea to Jon Moxley, Willer Yuta was one of the names in which he laid in front of Moxley as somebody that they can mold in their image. And personally, I didn't know a whole lot about Willer Yuta before joining the Best Friends, but watching his skill in the ring, man, that guy can go. So now you put the tutelage of William Regal, Bryan Danielson, and Jon Moxley in this kid, and then you just build this stable full of killers, and that has potential.
You get Wheeler Yuta away from the stable of clowns, and I know people love Orange Cassidy, but get him away from that. If he's someone that you feel you can build up, oh god, get him away from that group, and yeah, put him with Regal into that stable, and I agree completely. All right, we'll move on. I know something you're really excited about here is a match that's been announced for Super Card of Honor, April 1st, Friday, the weekend of WrestleMania. The Briscoes of Ring of Honor fame versus FTR. What do you think about this match?
So this match has been something that, what was it, the final battle of 2021? They had FTR come out. There was that whole standoff between them and the Briscoes.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, we know going out of Final Card 2021 that Ring of Honor was going to be in a little bit of a limbo. And I don't know if you ever listened to Busted Open Radio or not, but, they had the Briscoes calling in, talking about wanting to talk to Tony Khan. You have Tony Khan with his segment every week saying that they're not interested in the Briscoes. And then you find out the news that Ring of Honor has been bought by Tony Khan. Here's in my opinion, two of the greatest tag teams in the world today. 100%. And we're going to let them go at it at, Super Card of Honor. I couldn't be more stoked for this match.
Because I've never really watched Ring of Honor. I've gone back and seen some old, Bryan Danielson matches and Punk matches and Samoa Joe matches, things that I had an interest in going back and seeing. But I've never regularly watched Ring of Honor, certainly not lately. But I've always heard such great things about the Briscoes. Always wanted to watch their stuff. And yeah, FTR might be my favorite tag team right now. Probably is my favorite tag team right now. So Super Card of Honor went to being completely off my radar to now I've got to watch it just for this match. I'm really excited. All right, that'll do it for the episode. Tony, any last words?
No, not for me, but again, thank you guys for coming and watching us. And thank you, Bobby, for putting this all together weekly.
Man, it's so much fun to be here. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you don't miss an episode. Comment down below. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions. Shoot on us. Throw a promo at us. Make us a little nervous here, all right? We'll see you guys next week, you guys.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life, I never miss, that's fact, taking big swings, bitch, hand me the bat, put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag, cause I sing what I mean, and I bring it to the mad light.